Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sauna stream with Sauna Lake. It is No Shame November, and my name is Megan Dyer. I'm super excited to be hosting tonight, and I have with me some couple of very special guys. I've got Chief Mike Fischer and Chief Brian Gaudet with the Hillsboro and Cedar Hill Fire Protection Districts, and they're going to be joining us tonight to talk about No Shame November. You've probably heard of No Shave November. This month we are really advocating for everyone to help end the stigmas of substance use, so that people who are struggling with substance use disorders have the ability to reach out without shame to get help. So tonight I'm going to introduce both of the chiefs. We'll start with you, Mr. Fischer. Would you tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into this job?
Well, I started as a volunteer in Cedar Hill close to 30 years ago, and I fell in love with it, and it just progressed, and I stayed here, and they eventually hired me full time, and I've just been lucky enough and fortunate enough to work myself through the ranks all the way to fire chief, and so I just kind of luckily stuck it out here and made my way through the ranks.
That's awesome. And how about you, Chief Gaudet?
Well, again, my name is Brian Gaudet. I'm the fire chief of the Hillsboro Fire District, right next door to Cedar Hill Fire. And I guess a little background, me and Mick pretty much grew up in the fire service together. So we've been very good friends for a long time, and I'm excited to be here tonight. I started in Cedar Hill in the late 90s and then moved full-time to Hillsboro in 2001, and kind of just like Mick, worked my way up through the ranks, and here we are today.
That is really great to hear. And I know I shared this with you folks before we went live, but I have a huge appreciation for your profession. I know a lot of other folks do. So I thank you guys for taking time out of your no doubt busy schedules to join us for No Shame November. We really love that both of your fire protection districts have been able to join us not only tonight, but also in sporting the No Shame November t-shirts. And so I want to just ask you a question. So what was it about No Shame November when we brought the idea to you guys? What was it that made you say, yeah, I want to be part of that? Brian Gaudet, do you want to share on that?
Yeah, first off, I owe everybody an apology. I don't have my No Shame November shirt on right now. We literally just got back from a fire, so I didn't have time to change into that. So my apologies for that.
But understandable.
Substance abuse is a huge problem in our community. There's lots of issues within that. I think No Shame November goes hand in hand with No Shave November as well too, because there is quite a disproportionate amount of males affected by substance abuse. So it goes hand in hand with both issues. So it's important that we get the word out to everybody that there is help available and there is good resources out there for the community. And we're all on board to help solve somebody's problems.
I love it. How about you, Mr. Fischer?
Well, I think for us, it's we like to step up and help out with different things when we can, and this kind of goes along with like mental illness and drug abuse, where years ago it really wasn't discussed and talked about a whole lot, and that's changed. We're trying to get it out in the forefront of stuff. Trying to have just open discussions about it and stuff. So that's why our department was really willing and anxious to support the No Shame November.
And you brought up a really good point that I think it seems like the attitude has really changed in a lot of different facets towards substance use disorders. What have you seen in your industry, in your profession? How have the attitudes changed towards substance use disorders?
Well, I can tell you, just in my career, when I first started out 25, 30 years ago, we didn't really run drug overdoses very often. It was very rare. In my first 5 or 10 years in fire and EMS, I may have only seen Narcan come out once or twice. And to today's day and time, it's almost a daily basis that it's getting used. So we're seeing a lot more of it, and so we're trying to bring about the awareness because of that. So trying to get to why use has grown, what we can do to help these people, and what we can do to bring about awareness to get them the help that they need.
That's so noble, and the awareness I think is really huge. And you also you had mentioned that it seems like the last several years, I know you all have seen an increase in situations where you might need Narcan. How about you, Chief Gaudet? Have you had a similar experience?
Absolutely. I agree 100% with what Mick said. I know the big thing early on in Mick and myself's career was the meth labs were becoming a really big thing back in the mid to late 90s. And, a meth overdose does not do the same thing that an opiate overdose does. So Mick's right. The first 5 or 10 years of our career, and Mick and myself both worked and spent time on the ambulance as well too. We just didn't see drug overdoses, and it's a daily thing these days. We go through Narcan, unfortunately, left and right. So it needs to be addressed as a community. It's just not an individual's problem, and we need to tackle it as a community and get people the help that they need to get past their issues.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I know that when we come together as a community and we provide resources, that it makes it easier for folks living with a substance use disorder to reach out. And that's kind of one of the ideas behind No Shame November, right? Is that we want to encourage people that if you're living with this, if you're impacted by a substance use disorder, that you don't have to feel ashamed, that we're here to help you. So you both have shared this similar experience that you're encountering more and more of these overdose situations. Can you share a little bit more on what that's like for your fire protection district? That when you're encountering those, what types of drugs are you seeing people utilizing, and how has your fire protection district responded to that, Chief Gaudet?
Yeah, the biggest majority of the overdoses that we're seeing these days are heroin, and a lot of the heroin is laced with fentanyl and some of these other highly addictive painkillers, which kind of takes that initial heroin and makes it more addictive, and unfortunately takes the um, person using it back to the dealer for more and more and more. So, yeah, it's an everyday thing with heroin, and we're really concerned about what they are lacing this stuff with as well too. So I think it's pretty important that some of these people know what is in this stuff. It's dangerous, and it will unfortunately kill you. And it does get to the point where we want to find resources for these guys when we get on the scene and gals, and get them the necessary help that they need. But we kind of talked earlier too, and this may lead into another question, but the lack of help that's out there is very difficult to overcome in the first responder field. So we feel almost trapped and frustrated that there's no help for anybody that needs it or wants it out there. So that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing an increase in heroin overdose, and then a lack of resources to get these people the help they need. So I think this is great that Sauna Lake and all of us are teaming up together to try to get the word out.
I agree. And, this has a special place in my heart. I myself am in recovery. I have 7 years of sobriety. But my cousin, he was my best friend, 3 years younger than me, or sorry, 3 days younger than me, may as well have been a brother, right? He traveled a similar path that I think a lot of folks have traveled, where either they start with pain pills and those type of opioids, and it ends up leading into heroin, and the next thing you know, it's what else is bigger and stronger that I can take that will work, because heroin's not cutting it in,
Right.
or they're getting heroin laced with fentanyl. And in 2010, my cousin died of a fentanyl overdose, and it's crazy to think that was 11 years ago. But I can think back then, that was one of the first times I'd ever even heard of fentanyl. It was newer on the streets, so to speak, and now it just seems like it's everywhere. Chief Fischer, I know Chief Gaudet had mentioned resources. I know my family would have loved to have had more resources back in 2010. But again, here we are a decade later. This is still a problem in our communities. What do you see that could potentially be a resource, or what would that look like in a perfect world? Like, what do you think that we should be offering to folks as resources right now?
Well, I think kind of like to back up what Chief Gaudet said, with what we're seeing out there, with the opioid use and that seems to be really what's out there. I think there needs to be some good education on what this stuff does to you, and that it can potentially cause you death, and it needs to be out there for everybody, because I also feel like um, it when you talk about drug overdoses, it's you can't really set it to a profile of a person. We're seeing it in young people, we're seeing it in older people, we're seeing it in low income families, we're seeing it in high income families. There's really no set demographic where this is happening. It's very broad. And I think the big thing would be education and getting people to understand what the use of this drug, how addictive these drugs are, and what they can do to you, and then where to go when you do need help. And the other broad spectrum that we see on these calls is sometimes you run a call and it may be somebody that just used it for the first time because they were experimenting, or they just wanted to see what it was like, all the way to you may get somebody that completely denies that they used a drug, but you're standing there telling them, I just gave you Narcan, I just saved your life. I know you used a drug. We'd like to help you. So the spectrum is so wide on this that I think that's the difficulty is trying to get people educated.
I think that education is so huge. And I'm curious, how often do you gentlemen see people that when you go to administer Narcan, or you're going to one of these calls where there's been an overdose, how often do you encounter people who say, yeah, I need help, versus the folks who are, arm's distance, like I don't want help, maybe because it's the shame, maybe the fear. How often do you have people who are willing and ready to say, yeah, please, I need some resources?
Well, I think on our end, a lot of the times what we see is not necessarily the individual that wants help, but the family of that individual that needs those resources to help guide those individuals to some sort of a treatment program. Family, I think, is so important in healing people past their addiction. A lot of times, trying to get to the family and just letting them know what resources are available for them is a huge step in the right direction. And that goes back to exactly what Chief Fischer said with education.
I agree. I think it does. It starts in the home. It starts with loved ones. Um, so I know this is a community issue, right? We talked about that. Um, what what message do you want to share with your community about No Shame November, about people who are living with a substance use? Like, if you could say one thing to the community, what would it be? Chief Fisher?
I think it's just we're here to help you. So, we say that every time we encounter one of these calls, whether the person's looking for help or not, we always let them know we're here to help them. Whether it's helping them with just that single event where they overdosed, or to help them even further to try to find additional help and resources that they need.
I hope people hear that. How about you, Chief Gaudet?
I think, on our end, having a little bit of empathy is extremely important as first responders towards these folks, and letting them know that we're here to help no matter what the situation is. There's no judgment on our end. And if you want help, if you need help, we will help guide you to get those resources that are available out there, be it through the hospitals, or in an organization like Sauna Lake or some of the other healthcare providers that are out there. There are resources. I think there needs to definitely be more in the state of Missouri, but that might be another question. But we definitely just need to get the education out there and let them know that we're here to help, non-judgmental.
That non-judgment is so key, right? I think that because there is such a stigma attached to substance use disorders, whether it be from the media or how it's portrayed in in Hollywood, to even the glorification we see of drug use, even among, some social circles. I think that for people to know that, hey, it's okay. We're not here to judge you, that we want to give you help, that there is hope out there, that you don't have to live this way, right? That things can get better. I really hope that's a message that people will get out of, not only No Shame November, but also just interacting with your team of first responders, because a lot of times you could be the only voice of help somebody might hear. They may not get it from their friends or from sometimes even their family, sadly. So I'm so glad to hear that you guys are, of that mindset, of putting people first, that we're all humans, right? Um, so I do have another question about the types of calls that you guys get. I've heard a lot of stories from other first responders that sadly many of these calls are the same individuals, that we have a lot of repeat situations. Have you folks experienced that as well?
Yeah, it does happen quite frequently. And usually, we, like Brian said earlier, we try to be very empathetic, and it does get difficult for us when we're running the same person over and over. But what you try to remind everybody is that they need more help. That person needs more help. You need to reach out for them, and not to shame them, but to just keep reminding them that hey, we came here and we just saved your life. And if we would have been on another call and been further away, or somebody wouldn't have found you, you could possibly be dead. And so what can we do to get you that help? Um, and that's again, that's the hard part, is getting that single individual to reach out for help. Like Brian said, a lot of times you can get the family on board, and I think that helps if you can get the family and friends to continue to encourage those people, so they'll only help they're getting help from them. They're not just getting help just from us in that moment that we're there. That continues in our absence. You just have to keep trying to help them.
That's good. I love to hear that. We can't give up. We can't give up. How about you, Chief Gaudet? Are you seeing a lot of, I know the technical term I believe is recidivism. Are you seeing a lot of that on the calls that your department is taking?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly what Chief Fischer said. I can think back a few years ago, we had one instance of, I think it was 12 times in a 1 month period for an individual. So, and unfortunately, that did not end well. So yes, it's 100% correct in saying that. Um, we just want to get to the point where we can somehow get these folks the help that they need. And we understand it may not be the first time they go in for help that they're going to be, rid of the opiate addiction. It might take them 5 or 6 or 7 times to try to quit before they're, past that point. So we just got to keep as first responders, keep our heads up and keep trying to get through to the families and the individuals that resources are available. So yeah, unfortunately, um, repeat patients are unfortunately a real thing.
Now, I know I've heard both of you mention Narcan. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I know a lot of folks are um, hoping that Narcan could be one of those resources. And I read an article not that long ago, I believe it was out of Kansas City, that the experts are saying that everybody should carry it with them, whether you are a substance use disorder or impacted by that or not. What are your thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Brian.
Um, do I think? Yes, I am in favor of people having access to Narcan. What scares us in the first responder field with everybody having Narcan is the short life that Narcan has within the body. So I worry about somebody that has potentially had an overdose. A family member gives them Narcan. Uh, then just leaves them alone, and that Narcan wears off, and the opiates take back over, and they go back into respiratory arrest, which will eventually lead to cardiac arrest. So while I'm in favor of that, we also stress that anybody that uses Narcan on a loved one also needs to call 911. because that patient could very quickly relapse back into that state of unconsciousness, and we don't want to see that happen.
I can't, that would have to be so scary as a family member having to administer Narcan, I think, in the first place, let alone not being aware that it doesn't last, that there could be a potential of that person slipping back into unconsciousness, as you said. How about you, Chief Fisher? What are your thoughts on Narcan?
Yeah, I kind of would like to mirror what Brian said. I agree with him. Also, another additional fear is that, if they need to understand, if you're there and you help them with Narcan, and they make that decision not to go to the hospital, and you leave and they use again, now they've that the original amount that they use is still in their system, and now they're compounding it. And also the fact of we don't want to see users feel like that's their safe thing, that, well, maybe I can take a little bit more of this drug that I'm using to get a little higher because I have Narcan. And it's going to fix everything, because there have been times when we can't give enough Narcan to save somebody's life because these drugs are so potent. And that's, more of that education that they need to understand, that there's only so much ability that Narcan has to be able to overcome the amount of drugs that they have in their system, and then it may or may not work.
And
that's a really good point.
Can I add to what Mick brought up, something that kind of sparked something as well too? As a family member or a friend, you're not going to go to jail. You're not going to be arrested. You're not going to get in trouble for calling 911 to help your friend out that has, or a family member that has overdosed. We're there to help. And lots of times, even in our county, law enforcement is stretched thin as always. So lots of time there's not even law enforcement there on the scene with us for some of these overdoses, just depending on the situation. So we need to remove the fear of these people going to jail for trying to help somebody as well too.
That is really a great point, and I think those are great words of encouragement. And I know that there's been legislation that has been passed. I can't think of the name of it currently, but I know we have had some moves towards that. Even is the state of Missouri, and hopefully we'll see this outside of Missouri in other communities where they're encouraging folks to know that if you reach out for help for someone else, there's not going to be a negative repercussion, that at the end of the day, the top priority is to save a life. So any closing thoughts from either of you folks on No Shame November, on helping to end the stigma? Chief Fisher?
I think just, to reiterate our conversation, is that we all need to work to get more education out to people, and to people of all backgrounds, and to just help them understand the whole process of what it means to become addicted, what you can do if you become addicted, and what resources are available to you to try to overcome addiction. And just to reemphasize that we're here to help. And like Brian said, even when law enforcement is involved in these calls where somebody's called for help, they're not sending people to jail. They're trying to get them the help that they need. And they're not there to arrest people. They want to make sure that they're going to be okay, and try to get them led in the right direction. So, we just want to keep educating people, and we try to keep reemphasizing to our employees and our first responders that, reminding them that they're there to help these people too, and to keep encouraging and try to offer whatever help that we have available to them.
That's wonderful. Chief Gaudet, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I pretty much mirror exactly what Chief Fisher said. We're here to help the community. We're not here to provide a judgment to anyone. We want to get people the help that they need and so desperately want. So please reach out if you need help. There are resources available out there. And you're not alone in this. There is help, and we want to see people get well.
That's I couldn't have said it better myself. I love what both of you have said. And I also want to encourage anybody who's watching, whether you yourself may be struggling with a substance use disorder, if you have a family member struggling with a substance use disorder, please reach out. Sauna Lake is here to help. We've got our website and our phone number here on the bottom of the video. And know that there is no shame in reaching out for help. In fact, it takes a big step to be able to reach out for help, and we applaud that. So even if you just have questions, I recommend please reach out to Sauna Lake. We're definitely here to be a helping hand. I want to thank you, Chief Fischer and Chief Gaudet. I have enjoyed speaking with you both tonight, and we thank you both for allowing your departments to join us in No Shame November, and we look forward to doing this again next year. Thank you all. Hope everybody has a great night. Yep, take care.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.